Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Robert Guenther. We want to welcome you to our second Washington Conference webinar that we're hosting today. Many of you may have been on last week's webinar, and today will be just a little bit diving deeper into some of the issues we're going to be talking about. We're really going to focus today on kind of how the virtual March on Capitol Hill is going to be done. And we've got some new information to share with you. We're excited that today we went live with actually our current list of congressional member meetings we have thus far, and also our issue papers up on our website. And I will share some of that with you as well as we move forward in the next hour. So in today's webinar, we're going to talk a little bit about why Washington Conference is so important. Then you're going to be hearing from Jacki KaplanWiggins, who's been a longstanding supporter of the Washington Conference, has been coming for many years. And she's going to talk a little bit about how the meetings and why the meetings are so important to participate in. And then we'll kind of dig into some of the details of the virtual March, what it'll look like if you're an attendee, if you're going to be an attendee, what's the process. Then we'll walk through a little deeper than we did last week on the policy issues. I'll talk through that a little bit. And then we'll do questions and discussions at the end. If you have questions and discussions throughout the webinar today, please use the question and answer function on your webinar. That's the easiest way. And then when we get to those questions, we will be able to go through those and answer them the best we can. So to get started, I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the 5 key things that we think are important of the Washington Conference. First of all is sharing our story. There's no important thing more, and I'll talk about this a little bit later as part of the 3 things to focus on this year, is really sharing our story about what is important to you and why these issues impact your company, your business, your operation, your employees throughout throughout the entire industry, of why these issues are important to you personally and your company. Also, another important part about this is our general sessions in education and networking. We have 3 general sessions, 6 education sessions, and 3 networking opportunities, 12 hours of programming. It's really going to be very exciting to hear from elected leaders, from the administration, and a lot of these different sessions. So, we're excited about our structure and our general sessions in our education. Finally, our virtual March on Capitol Hill, which we'll talk more about today, is another important part of this. While we're not going to all be in person doing these meetings, we are going to be able to do them virtually, and we're excited about the members we've already got scheduled to do these meetings. This year, it's cost effective more than ever. You don't have to pay for a plane flight. You don't have to pay for a room at the hotel, restaurants, dinners, things like that. So we really think this is a very cost-effective way to get our message out to Capitol Hill and the administration here in Washington, D.C., to share our stories, to talk about those issues that are important. And then one thing I wanted to add is kind of some of the issues we've been working on already that have been very important and that we want to continue to move is some of the things going on related to COVID, the PPP program, the Farm to Families program, the Payment to Growers, CFAP. These things, again, I'll talk about shortly. But we've already had a very significant success, but we need to continue that success, and being a participant in this year's Washington Conference is going to be very important for us to have. So as I mentioned today, we're going to focus mostly on the virtual March on Capitol Hill. And I'm happy to now introduce Jacki KaplanWiggins, who is Vice President and CEO of Frieda Specialty Produce. She's also a member of our 2020 Washington Conference Working Group and past United Fresh board member. Again, as I mentioned, Jacki has been coming to Washington Conference for a number of years. She's been a team leader. She's been a member of the teams. And I wanted Jacki to talk a little bit directly to her peers and to all of you about why these meetings are so important, what the value they bring to the industry, to the United Fresh Association throughout, not just during the week of the Washington Conference, but throughout the year. So Jacki, welcome, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Robert. And for those on the West Coast, good morning. And for everyone else, good afternoon. As Robert said, I'm a longtime attendee. In fact, I attended the very first Washington conference back in 1995. and have attended almost every single one since then. And I will say for me, it was certainly eye-opening to really understand what United Fresh did for us as members. You know, there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes throughout the year that many of us, as we're running our businesses, don't really get to see. But the staff spends a tremendous amount of time connecting with members, with their staffers, and this is an opportunity for us to also support them. One of the things I learned was, congressional leaders really need to hear from us as constituents in their districts. For people that are in agriculture, it was very interesting several years ago when Sam Farr, who represented the Salinas area, met with the California contingency, shared a story about bringing members that were in the agricultural sector, but they were really from areas outside of California and Florida and Arizona. They're from the Midwest, from the Farm Belt. And as he took them out to the fields and they were surveying the fields, these agricultural leaders from different states were like, what are those people doing out there? And Sam looked at them, they're harvesting crops. And I think it was eye-opening for these people because they're used to harvesting with only equipment, with combines. And it really drove home some of the issues, especially that we have with labor, that hadn't been issues for them in the past. As we do the march on Capitol Hill, I think one of the advantages of having these virtual marches or virtual meetings is we'll probably have a better opportunity to meet with the actual members, where in the past we sometimes met with members, sometimes met with their staff. I think this gives us a unique opportunity with everyone being sheltering in place to actually have meetings with the members. But if we don't, understand that the staffers are that communication link for the members. There's so many different types of bills and constituent concerns that are thrown at the members, that the staffers really are the ones who are educated on what is important to our segment. And by having that direct conversation with them is just as important as meeting with a member, because they are educated, they can share why this is important to support our cause. As Robert mentioned, it is really important for each of us to share our personal story. And so later in the webinar, we're going over what are those issues that we want to bring up the forefront, is being prepared to say, how has COVID affected your business? What are the challenges you faced? What are some of the opportunities that you were able to take advantage of? And for the members that have supported us, to say thank you to them for their support. And for those who may not support our issues, is being able to share how, being part of our industry and getting the support of all members has really helped benefit us. We feed the world, we feed their constituents. And so it's so important for them to support us as well. And I know that Mark Klemping in last week's webinar, for those of you who attended, he talked about making those personal connections. When you meet with a member, whether it's virtually or face-to-face, there's that personal connection that you make. And it's also an opportunity to invite the members when they are in district to come see your facility, to see some of the challenges you face and to see what we're doing, because many of them don't get that opportunity but are welcoming it. Many years ago after Washington conference, I had Senator Tom Harkin from Iowa come to our facility here in California. And it was pre-FSMA, and I think he was trying to understand food safety. He wanted to know what we were doing, and I think he was really pleasantly surprised to see what our industry was actively doing without legislation. And it really told him that, hey, we're pretty regulated between, I know what I shared was between USDA, FDA, and when we were importing products from Colombia, the DEA even got involved. So really us being able to tell our story. And then for those, you know, Frieda's is not a grower. We represent growers. We're a wholesaler distributor. So I think every segment can benefit. You know, it doesn't matter if you are, you know, doing one segment. They have to understand our industry is very broad. You know, we have many segments that are involved. And so some of us can share our story, whether it's if you're in transportation and logistics, or if you represent food safety, is really how big our industry is and all the different segments and how we come together to work together. And finally, you know, one of the things, and I remember very early on, is it's because of these marches on Capitol Hill that, you know, one of the things is PACA, you know, back early in the mid to late 90s when it was at risk to not being renewed. It was that march on Capitol Hill, and I remember Representative Richard Pombo was the one who really led that charge, and it was because of our involvement and going up on Capitol Hill and sharing that and being able to be the conversation of FSMA. You know, what are the challenges from the initial legislation that was introduced in 2011 to when it was finalized in 2015. You know, I think us being involved and talking really made a difference. So thank you, Robert, for allowing me to share my story, and welcome to any questions that people have. If you have never attended Washington Conference, I'll tell you it's life-changing. It really does give you a different perspective, and you get to really interact with other people in an industry that you might not be able to normally.
No, Jackie, I think thank you again for coming on today. And, you know, joining us. I think another, you know, I was actually, it's funny you mentioned Senator Harkin's story, because I think that's a very unique kind of, you know, message that you get from somebody from Iowa, somebody who had no relationship with our industry, quite frankly, was very involved in food safety. If people remember way back then, he had his own produce food safety bill. This was pre-FSMA. Spoke at our conference. As Jackie mentioned, came out to their facility in California, toured it, kind of understood what was going on. And then more importantly, Senator Harkin from Iowa is the father, so to speak, of the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program. He came back several years later to speak at the conference and announced he was going to do a pilot program. And now that is a national program that's feeding children a fresh fruit and vegetable snack across this country in schools throughout the year, and has really made a big difference in our industry. And, you know, that's a great relationship. Even building on that, Jackie's sister Karen spoke in front of the Senate Ag Committee during Child Nutrition Reauthorization. So those are how these unique relationships can be built, not just with your member of Congress or senator, but with others throughout the country. And as Jackie mentioned, I do think this is a very interesting opportunity we have this year to create that kind of network of champions on Capitol Hill. So let me kind of move forward a little bit. Here we go. So as I mentioned, unique opportunity, Zooming with Congress. I think, you know, Jackie hit the nail on the head. You know, this will be an interesting time. You know, obviously we're going to do everything we can to get visits with your member of Congress, but I think another unique opportunity is you'll be able now to participate in meetings throughout the country, from senators and congressmen from other parts of the country, different political parties. This is going to allow you to participate in some of those meetings. The other good news is, for a lot of you who have done the congressional meetings throughout the Washington Conference, is we're actually spreading these meetings out over a 6-day period. It's not three hours on Wednesday afternoon and Thursday afternoon, you know, trudging back and forth from the House and the Senate. You know, a lot of meetings, a lot of compact time, and everybody's really exhausted after that. This is really going to help with your schedules, and we're spreading these meetings out over 6 days. Again, Jackie mentioned quality visits, and I think she has hit the nail on the head. We've seen a very big, at least initially, what we have thus far, of members of Congress who want to have these meetings personally with their constituents, with our industry. I mean, one of the questions we've been asking them is, are they okay with having non-constituents in these Zoom meetings? And they've all said yes. It's not just going to be a constituent meeting, so they're okay having people from across the country visiting with them when we have the Zoom meetings. We're also weaving in the schedule some administration meetings, so key administration officials we're going to have during that same time, and also some embassy visits or embassy meetings. So we're inviting several of the embassy attachés to have meetings with folks who are interested in those types of meetings. As I mentioned, I think the format is, again, unique and allowing some interaction with Q&A, and I'll kind of walk through what we think will be what a meeting will kind of look like. So yes, we're used to those personalized meetings on the left-hand side, and this is what we're used to. But now we're weaving, as I mentioned, into more of a Zoom type approach. The one on the top left is really a meeting I participated in with key members of the House Ways and Means Committee. So you can see Jimmy Panetta's on there from Salinas. You can see Mike Thompson from California, from the Napa Valley. Don Byer from Northern Virginia up on the top here, Gwen Moore from Wisconsin. So this was a meeting I participated in a couple months ago about COVID. And you've got staff up there. So this will kind of be what you see and look and feel like. I know a lot of you have done virtual meetings, but there will be a member, maybe a couple of members at one same time, some staff with them, and then us on the call having a discussion and kind of walking through like we would try to do a typical meeting in person. So to look at this kind of in another way, as I mentioned, we are now live as of today with our virtual March schedule and our meeting profiles. And what I'm going to do is kind of walk you through real quick here. I'm going to share a screen with you. Where is it? Here we go. Can you guys see that? Can you see the Washington Conference website? Jackie, you nodding? I can't see other people. Okay, good. So basically, this is our website for the Washington Conference. And if you scroll down and you want to learn about meetings we've already got scheduled, you click this on, the virtual meetings. And then what you're going to see is a list of meetings that we have already got scheduled. This first day, for instance, you've got both the House and Senate Ag Committee chairmen, Colin Peterson from Minnesota, Pat Roberts from Kansas. You've also got Senator John Boozman from Arkansas. And many of you say, well, why are we having a meeting with somebody from Arkansas? It's not really a produce state. Well, he was most likely going to be the incoming either chairman or ranking member of the Senate Ag Committee. Pat Roberts is retiring. So Senator Boozman will be that person coming in. So we're already making that introduction as an industry to him early on before next year, before the new Congress is set. But you can see here, we've got a wide range of meetings and schedules. Throughout the week. I'm just kind of scrolling slowly here. At the bottom, you will notice we have meetings already scheduled. So these are meetings that are scheduled, but we're still waiting on times and dates. They've confirmed they want to meet with our members. So again, as a attendee, you can look through this and click meetings for your own congressional member, but also other members from other parts of the country. We will be updating this regularly. We have still a lot of meeting requests out, especially as we get more registrations in. So this will be updated pretty regularly. So for those who have already registered for the conference, you will be getting an email, hopefully in the next 24 hours, with a ability to RSVP for these meetings. But remember, one of the key things here is you must be registered to RSVP for the meetings. So you want to look at somebody, you're kind of scrolling through this and you don't know a member of Congress somewhere, but you're interested in why are we having a meeting with them. I'll click on, let's see, what's a good one to find here. I'll do Joe Courtney from Connecticut. So this is kind of a meeting with Joe Courtney. This shows his member profile. And you can see here kind of some of the relevant caucuses that he belongs to, district info, his bio. And then these are some of the bills that we have worked on. These are bills with key votes and how he's voted. And votes we've identified as important votes throughout the last couple of years, but also the bills that we have focused on that are sponsors. So there's, the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. That was the immigration bill that passed Congress. He did not sponsor that bill, but he has done some of these other bills. The Pandemic Child Hunger Prevention Act, he is a sponsor of. So these are ways that you can learn more about those members. If you want to participate in that meeting, you can do that as well. The other buttons here include the Fresh Produce State Profile. Also, this link here regarding learning more about the member of Congress, that goes straight to his website to learn more about him or her who are in Congress. So that's a quick overview of kind of what the schedule is going to look like, the profiles that we've established, and I think it's really robust, and it's a good starting point for everybody to dig their teeth into, so to speak, as they move forward with deciding what meetings they want to go to. So let me kind of go back to the slides, and then we'll talk about. Let's see here. You guys see the PowerPoint again? We good? Okay. So going back to the slides, now I want to talk a little bit about kind of some of the issues. I'm going to dig a little deeper into the issues and why these policy issues are so important. And how we've kind of framed everything this year is kind of like in 3 buckets. There's 3 types of ask that we're looking for. There's the ask right now of maintaining these current existing COVID programs that have been very beneficial since the CARES Act, since March, when everything happened and they passed legislation. So there are several programs there that I'll talk about in a minute that are very important to our industry that have been working in many different ways that have helped the entire supply chain in a lot of examples. Then the second bucket really is some bills and legislation that we are looking forward to get into this next round of negotiations or next round of stimulus. We expect September to be a huge, very critical month for the COVID, what we call COVID-4 stimulus package. And what that really means is that right when we're there, they're going to be in the middle of trying to negotiate between the House, the Senate, and the administration a COVID-4 package before they leave to go back and run for re-election before the elections in November. So that'll be an important part for us to push, is why these bills we think should be included in the new COVID-4 package. And then lastly, again, I think the third important bucket, and again, we keep harping on this or keep going back to this, is you got to tell your story. You got to really sit there and bring this home and bring this to these members, because they hear from us, they hear from the professional staff, all the time. Their teams do, their staff does, of why these programs are important to the industry. But having that personal story, making it personal to that member or senator, is going to be what they remember the most. More than me talking about, different provisions in the bill and what we'd like to get changed or what we like. They want to know those real stories, real life stories, that what programs are helping, what can they do to help more. So looking at the first bucket, looking at the maintaining existing COVID programs, what you see here is really 4 different key programs, and really in particular 3 programs that we want to focus on. The Paycheck Protection Program, Farms to Family, the CFAP program, which is direct payments to growers, and then there's a collection of nutrition area programs that we have worked on to make sure that they continue and that they continue to be useful during this challenging time with schools and other feeding nutrition programs at the federal level. So if you look at this, starting with the Paycheck Protection Program, we as an industry has already been participating in this program at $2.7 billion. About 2,800 industry members have utilized this program, which is very critical to helping protect the industry, helping to maintain staffs, helping pay for certain things that they are that they are allowed to pay, their rent, their utilities, leases, things like that, through the Paycheck Protection Program. So it's a very critical program. Turning to Farms to Family, the food box program, about $1.7 billion has been allocated just to fresh produce boxes for these different for those most in need. Again, this has been a hugely successful program. 176 produce companies have been participating across the country in this program. As you may know, the President and the Secretary of Agriculture just announced on Monday that they are putting in another $1 billion for this program. But the challenge, what we want to, but not the challenge, but what we want to do is continue to see, make this program work as it moves forward, not just in the next several months, but throughout the remainder of this year and into 2021. And then finally, the Coronavirus Food Assistance Programs, or CFAP payments. These are the payments that are going to growers directly through the Department of Agriculture. Right now, almost $500 million has been allocated to fruits and vegetables. About 9,700 applicants, 13,000 growers are participating now, and that continues to grow as we speak. That program, the application program, ends on September 11th, and that program, again, has been a very important lifeline, a tool for the growers directly to maintain their operations moving forward. And then lastly, the nutrition programs, again, WIC, USDA purchases. There's been about $125 million of purchases, direct purchases from USDA of fruit and vegetables. The fresh fruit and vegetable program waivers, which I'll talk about in a second. Again, that has been a very key program. Those programs have been very key to maintain that access to fresh fruits and vegetables in the federal nutrition programs as we've experienced this COVID outbreak. So what are the key messages related to these programs? They've been valuable tools. I think we need to continue to press that. They have worked. They haven't worked perfectly. Nothing ever does when sometimes the federal government is involved, but they have been very valuable tools throughout the industry. So then, in other words, as we talk to members of Congress, we want to make sure we are emphasizing that we want to maintain and enhance these programs as they continue to negotiate the COVID-4 legislation that could be finalized when we're there in September. So the second bucket is broadening assistance for the fresh produce industry. And these are really, as I mentioned before, pieces of legislation that are out there at this time that have been introduced since the CARES Act, that have been the things that we have focused on, that we have really tried to push for to help enhance the tools that are already there, provide additional tools in the toolbox. The first one, the Food Protection Act, which was introduced by Senator Debbie Stabenow from Michigan and has 14 co-sponsors. This establishes grants for PPE supplies so that the companies and businesses can apply for those types of grants so they can offset some of the costs related to PPE supplies. The PLUS Act, many of you are familiar with this, providing liquidity for uncollected sales. Again, this provides a tax credit to those produce companies that have really had a challenge of uncollectible debt for products that were shipped prior to the COVID-19 shutdowns. We call this now the donut hole. There is a significant amount of debt that happened in March when everything shut down that is still out there in our industry, and not just our industry, the seafood industry, the broadline industry, the distributor industry, that has been uncollected because restaurants have had to shut down and they've not been able to pay those debts back. This would provide some relief through a tax credit to the produce companies and others who are in this, what we call the donut hole. The Frontline Act, the PLUS Act was introduced by Congressman LaHood from Illinois and Congressman Panetta from California as well. So a bipartisan bill, which always means it has a good chance of being included in the final package. The Frontline Act, which was introduced by Senator Ernst from Iowa. This bill really provides essential workers with the suspension of federal income and payroll taxes up to an annual income of $50,000 annually. So this bill is really directing those true frontline workers who are out there in the fields, who are at the grocery stores, who are helping school children kind of continue to get fruits and vegetables and other important healthy nutritious products out there, to provide some suspension of their federal income and payroll taxes. The WIC Benefit Flexibility Act, this increases benefits for fruit and vegetable vouchers. It was introduced by Congresswoman Schreier of Washington State and Congressman Wright of Texas. Again, a bipartisan bill. Basically, right now, WIC recipients get a $7 and $11 voucher, respectively. This would increase the WIC voucher for fresh produce purchases to $35 on a temporary basis when we go through the math. So a big increase, but again, important for these people in these federal nutrition programs to have access to healthy, fresh produce. The Fresh Produce for Kids Act. I talked about the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program. As you know, that program traditionally has been a snack during the school day in the classroom. This provides a waiver to serve fresh fruit and vegetable snacks in any type of environment. So if families are coming and picking up lunches or food from the schools, they can also utilize the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program funding for a snack that's contained in that program. I will mention that both the WIC bill and the Fresh Produce for Kids Act is included in the House version of their Stimulus 4 package. It's not included in the Senate, but is included in the House. So again, both of those bills, the reason they're in there is because they're bipartisan, and they had a lot of support going into the Senate, the House version, what they call the HEROES Act. And then finally, Get America Back to Work Act. This is dealing with liability issues. It would provide protection for businesses from frivolous lawsuits, and for those businesses who have abided by government standards and even exceeded them. Again, this would provide some form of protection. There's two versions of this in the House, which is the title of this bill. Congressman Graves from Louisiana and Congressman Cuellar from Texas, again, Republican, Democrat. This is the bill they've introduced, but there's also in the Senate bill that was introduced by Majority Leader McConnell. They have a very significant liability provision called Safe to Work Act that's in their bill, their comprehensive bill to address the COVID-4 issues. So again, key messages: we're very happy with the current programs, but more is needed to be done. And I think when you look at the broad spectrum of kids, of the frontline people in the front line, those who still have debt on their books, getting assistance for PPE equipment, all of these things will add tools to the toolbox for industry to continue to recover from this COVID-19 experience. So lastly is my third bucket, which is tell your story. I think that's very important to include because, again, there's nothing more important than trying to tell your story and trying to kind of bring these things down from a policy, but into a personal perspective. I think importantly, to look at trying to share, first share some positive examples. Tell members if you've supplied commodities to a distributor packing the farm to family food boxes, or maybe you've owned, you have your own commodity contract with USDA. Talk about the PPP loans, how it's helped you and keep your employees on the payroll. And then second, share the pain that's still out there. We have to kind of show the bucket two, kind of why we need these further programs included. The increased cost of you're paying to keep your employees safe, the debt that remains unpaid by restaurants from food service shutdown, your concerns over trial lawyers, suing companies for someone getting sick, even though you've done everything the government has asked you to do. These are the things that need to be expressed to these members of Congress. And again, I have a little chart up here, which you can download in our issue brief section. Really 5 things the members want to know. Provide a history, an overview, of your company. Share numbers, share examples, how many employees, where you're located, where else you're located, maybe beyond just your headquarter location. Give them the facts, and then obviously, as we always say, let them know how they can help. That's the important part, is don't just go in there to talk about things. You need an ask, and this is one of the things why we put together our key ask during the Washington Conference. So that's a quick overview of some of the issues we're going to be talking about. And I'll get to that. Maybe seem very overwhelming, but there are some tools we're going to provide you to get you ready for the virtual March. So as I mentioned, we actually, our issue brief and talking points all of this is available live. The first 3 things are available today as we speak. So you saw the member profiles that we're meeting with. Our issue brief and talking points is now up online and available. Facts about state fruit and vegetable industry. Obviously the recordings of last week's webinar, this webinar, the next week's webinar are going to be important. And then eventually, once you sign up for meetings, you will get a unique Zoom login for your congressional meetings. So I want to share for a minute the issue brief so you don't feel overwhelmed and me just kind of talking about all these different issues in my terms, my own terms. So what I want to share with you now is the issue briefs. So what I'm going to do here is go to that. Can you see that? You good? So here's really the issue brief. It's not what you traditionally think of an issue brief that you get when you come here and you get your binder and you got an issue for each thing. It's really how we frame this again into 3 different buckets. So the current state of play is up here. You can link on if you want to learn more about McConnell's $1 Trillion HEALS Act and the House's $3 Trillion HEROES Act. This will send you to links directly to the bills. And then as we move down, these things related to when I mentioned the Paycheck Protection Program, the CFAP, Farm to Families Program. Again, these will share with you some of the programs that are important, kind of the backgrounds, and if you want to dig deeper into some of these programs. Again, scrolling back and working our way down. And then again, we have the key talking points as well on here. And again, it's kind of the second bucket, new programs. If you want to learn more about these bills, there's some more information here, but also we have links to the bills and things like that that we've included on here as well. And then, like for instance, the Frontline Act. You can go on here, and this is kind of a page where you can look at the bill and look at the backgrounds and what they're proposing. So again, you can dig as deep as you want on some of these issues, and you know, learn as much as you like. One of the things that I like on here is kind of key congressional committees. So why are these members important? So this shows you kind of the key people that we're meeting with, or at least key people in each committee. As I mentioned, you know, on the Farm Bill, Chairman Roberts, Stabenow, Peterson, all we have meetings with already. You know, folks like that. Again, we mentioned Roberts. You know, so there's a lot of these meetings that we're working on to try and get. So these are the key players in these committees. And why it's important we're all meeting with them as well is the fact that you know, they are going to be ones making a lot of decisions and negotiations for their committees and their members on issues that are going to be finally included in the final COVID-4 package. So you got a good sense of that. So I'm excited. We're excited this is up and running, and we're happy to have this up there. What I want to do is go back to the slides. This is always fun. Let's see. Hopefully we're back to the slides. So I mentioned these are kind of some of the key things that are happening as we speak. What I want to do now is kind of show you an example of kind of the meeting setup. So how we plan to set up the meetings, there will be a team leader, just like you'd have in person, that will be there to introduce and welcome everybody, welcome the member of Congress and senators. We will give them an opportunity to open up with remarks if they would like. Then we're going to talk about the issues, again, what we just talked about. What we're hoping to have is, you know, somebody from our team as one of the team leaders, a few of the constituents visible to kind of have that kind of dialogue back and forth. And then what we'll do is get into some questions and discussion, depending on how much time we have with each member during this time and kind of how the questions they want. We've asked them if they'll entertain questions. We've kind of walked through a lot of this with them. If they want questions beforehand, things like that. So we're going to have a chance for the constituents to ask questions first, and then if we have time, which we probably will, other people can type in questions that we can go through to ask those members of Congress and senators. We expect the meetings to be 30 to 45 minutes. Again, very similar to what we do in person. And as Jacki mentioned, you know, there are going to be some examples of situations where the members are not going to be there, or they might be there for a little bit and the staff's going to be on with them, and we're going to have kind of a, you know, both a staff member and the member of Congress, or just a staff member. I will say though, from at least initially in those meetings that you saw we posted earlier, I'd say 95% of them are members of Congress, if not more. Murray can correct me because she's the one who's been kind of keeper of the schedule. But the vast, vast majority of people of all those meetings are with the member directly. We will also, as part of it, so you will know if it's just going to be staff. So we will let you know that as well in the meeting schedule, as well as we continue to build on that meeting schedule. So just a couple more slides here. So if you have questions, go ahead and start typing them now. We've got plenty of time for questions and discussion. What can you do? Obviously, if you haven't registered already, register yourself, register your team. I know a lot of companies right now are bringing, where traditionally they might fly out one or two of them. They're registering multiple people from their teams to get an experience, that they may have from their teamers that may have never had the chance to come to the Washington conference. I know it's not the same, but it certainly is a good opportunity because of the cost effectiveness of this to expand the reach of this to not just yourself, but members of your team who haven't participated before. As I mentioned, sign up for congressional visits. Those who have already signed up and registered, you will be getting an email from us that gives you a link to RSVP for the meetings you want to go on. And we'll kind of keep track of that. And once we're ready, we will send out the kind of specific Zoom link for that particular meeting when we get closer to the conference. And then finally, as always, contact your peers in the industry to register. Hopefully share this video with them. Share last week's video with them. We got the issue brief now. Show them kind of the issues that we're going to be talking about and why it's important for a lot of, a broad spectrum of our industry to attend. I know Jackie mentioned earlier, and I think that's another important part of our meetings on the Hill is, as she mentioned, to show the broad spectrum of our supply chain in individual meetings. So a member of Congress can see a grower, can see a food service distributor, can see a wholesaler, can see somebody who's slicing and dicing fresh cut, even at the retail level. If they see that broad cross section of our membership in a meeting, it makes a big difference for them to understand our issues better, and they can talk through how these issues impact different parts of the supply chain. So diversity of members, diversity of the supply chain in our meetings is critical to having a successful Washington conference this year. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions and discussion. First question I can answer, will there be a maximum number of industry participants who can RSVP for each meeting? We have asked those members, we will let you know. It's a good question. I believe, and again, I will double check on this, at this time, nobody has said they're limiting it to 10 people or 15 people, but it's one of the questions we have asked members' offices. I mean, do you want a max of people, or do you have a max? If we do have that situation, that will be shared, and we'll make sure that the constituents of those get first priority to get into those meetings. So it's a great question. We will have information about that as we continue to schedule more meetings. Another question was, sounds like congressional meetings will be focused on key players in community versus per state like it in person last year. Is that a fair to assume, or did I miss that we will some reps in it for every state? So it's a great question, and we went back and forth on this. My answer to you is that no, we're not going to have 300 meetings, most likely, over even a week period. So everybody is, seeing a lot of different meetings. So what we decided to do was start out with prioritizing the meetings that we know will be most valuable to our industry. Now, if we have a group of 5 or 6 people from a congressional district we haven't invited yet, we're going to reach out to that office and we're going to say, hey, we've got 5 or 6 people from your district coming, register for our conference. We want you to schedule a virtual congressional meeting with them. So that is in play right now. We're tracking that as more and more people register. But it won't be the broad 300 meetings, that we've had, in past years. It will be more focused on key congressional committees, leadership, because right now, I mean, to be quite frank, they are the ones, as I mentioned earlier, are going to be the ones making a lot of decisions about how this new COVID package will be shaped, before they leave in September. So again, a key time for that as well. I don't see any questions in the queue at the moment. So if you have some more questions, go ahead and bring them up. Jackie, what kind of questions do you have? You always have good questions.
I don't know if I have a question, but kind of to
what did I miss?
To the previous comment, I think we have this unique opportunity to visit congressional leaders that are not in our district, whether they're on the Ag Committee, where we've never had this opportunity before, to really give them the broader perspective. So I'm really excited about the fact that we're not just limited, being from California, to the California contingent. And, you know, to be able to meet with Pat Roberts, you know, who, even though he's retiring, we have this great opportunity to talk about agriculture more broadly.
Good. No, that's a good point, Jackie. I think that, you know, I think the way things have changed, this is kind of the way we're going to have to be doing very strategic congressional meetings. And the way things have shaped up with what's going to be happening during September, it's going to be more important now to have those type of strategic meetings with key people. And fortunately, you know, we've had a good response from the offices. Again, to your point, you know, Colin Peterson, you know, Chairman Peterson wants to meet with us. Senator Roberts wants to meet with us. You know, I mean, we've had some of those people speak at the conference as keynote speakers. This is going to be a much more intimate, much more direct, so somewhat discussion that we can have with those senators and members of Congress who are in key spots to make decisions as we move forward. So a couple questions. How relevant is the current political climate division affect our industry? Okay. Yeah, it's been fun. It's been a fun, you know, here's what I would say. I think when you go back, if you go back and look, go back and dig deep into these bills that we have mentioned, and pretty much every one of them are bipartisan. So they've got a Democrat or Republican or multiple Democrats and Republicans that support them. And I think that is one of the first key things that people are going to be looking at, the decision makers are going to be looking at, to say whether they fit into a new kind of stimulus recovery package. If there's bipartisan support. So we have spent a lot of time being very careful about what we support, what we're pushing, new legislation to make sure it is bipartisan. So as you dig deeper, you can look at who's the co-sponsors of these bills, who's not a co-sponsor of these bills. In that issue brief in particular, they can share with you that information. So I think, you know, we're in a lot better position because we do have that bipartisan support on a lot of the initiatives that we are focusing on. We're not going to get involved in the big issues, you know, that you hear about every day between, you know, the Republicans and Democrats on those big ticket items that are not allowing them to come to some type of agreement. What we've got to make sure is stay focused on our issues, and when the timing is right, that our stuff gets put into the bill. And we'll kind of know that as those big issues started getting worked out. Liability is going to be a huge one. You know, funding states, the issue related to the income, the payments for people who are unemployed. You know, these 3 or 4, you know, there's other things out there that are important. You know, the Postal Service now is another issue that's come up. All of these issues kind of are going to have to play out as we watch them kind of come closer to agreement. Then, you know, when our issues are then going to come into focus more, and we got to make that last final push to get them included in the final package. Another question came up. Let's see, where is it? Another question. With limited time and attention, what is the best approach to capturing the attention and making impact for congressional business? In other words, how should the elevator pitch start to yield optimum interest and results? Well, I would say this. I think it all goes back to making it personal. You know, think about the issues you are most important to your business, and what do you want to focus on, and why are they important to your business? So, you know, what has worked, what hasn't worked, what do you want to work better, what would you like to see work better? And then I think follow up. I think that's a crucial thing to follow up with these offices, saying, hey, I participated, with the member, sending it directly to the member, an email to the staff, and reinforcing the conversation that you had and the messages you were trying to get through during our congressional meetings. Jackie, would you agree with that, or other things you would add to that?
I have nothing else to add, but I mean, I guess kind of a tag on question is, in the past when we've had the in-person meetings, we've had maybe 5 or 6 people in a group, and it was very easy for the team leader to kind of manage the group. If there is no limit and you have 20 or 25 people attending, is the team leader going to have meetings ahead of time to say who's going to speak about what, to make sure, I mean, to the point of being concise is, not all 25 people can speak.
Right. That's our plan. Yes. I mean, I think we will have opportunities to engage. Once people start signing up for meetings, we can start looking at that. Who's going to be in those meetings, who we want to play a role in to talk about particular issues, and give them enough advance notice to be able to be ready for that discussion. I think the other good part, actually, which is interesting, is that we're having the meetings after the actual education and general sessions. So you're not only going to get the stuff that's online that we have, but also you're going to be able to hear from other people for the first part of that week about some of these issues in more detail. So you will learn through the education sessions. You will learn more from the general sessions than some of our speakers. And then after that, we will be doing these visits. So you will have this kind of wealth of information, and really even up to the minute, literally up to the minute data as we go through that week of what's happening with the negotiations, what's kind of playing, what's important right now, what are members of Congress wanting to hear, things like that before we get into the actual meeting. So I think that's going to be another good part of the virtual congressional meetings. That was very good question. Any other comments that folks want to make? Not seeing any. Again, we want to thank you all for being on the webinar today. As a reminder, our third and final Washington Conference webinar will be held September 3rd, next Thursday at 2 o'clock. And then we're going to try to tie everything from last week and this week and then some more all together to kind of share with you the entire programming, what are some of the issues, even probably some updates on things that will happen over the next week on some of the issues we just talked about. But first and foremost, again, I'm going to thank Jackie for participating today. She's a wonderful advocate for our industry, for the produce industry. She's been a champion on Capitol Hill. The Frieda Caplan Scholarship Program, named after her mother, has been an integral part of our Washington Conference for many, many years, and we appreciate the support from the family on that, and you in particular, Jackie and Karen. It's goes to kind of the commitment that this meeting's about. This is the largest advocacy event of the year. It's 3 days of really showing our elected leaders the importance of our industry. So we need everybody to show up and register, and it'll be a great event this year. So thank you again. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next week.